Your Excellency, Sheikh Salman, maybe I'll follow up on this question on international organization, but with a two-pronged question. One is the role in terms of facilitating dialogue on fiscal policy specifically, and what is your view on initiatives that could improve the global tax, the efficiency of the global tax system that you would like to see in this dialogue that the international organizations facilitate?
Thank you very much, Abdullah. And first of all, it's a pleasure to be here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and at this wonderfully organized conference. And I'd like to thank His Excellency Minister Al-Jad'an and the authority for hosting us here today. On the question that you mentioned, and as His Excellency mentioned earlier, if we were to look at the framework and institutional framework, the multilateral institutional framework that the world depends on, this year marked the 80th anniversary of the Bretton Woods institutions. And when those institutions were set up, many of the challenges and opportunities that are being discussed today weren't even in anybody's imagination. So digital commerce, cross-border trade are new things and are vastly different in terms of the challenge set that they bring with them than what was faced when the institutions were set up. So to have an effective dialogue, it is extremely important that the institutions not only reflect the current realities in terms of global trade, but also are well suited to anticipate the future challenges that need to be dealt with. Just as an example, the flows of global trade and global economy are changing in a big way. The contribution of the rest of the world is significantly larger. If we were to go back 20 years ago, OECD countries represented more than 80% of global GDP. And today, those same OECD countries represent just above 60%. So we're seeing that the rest of the world is becoming a larger player in terms of economic activity and a significantly larger player in terms of global trade. And then with the digital opportunities that are presenting themselves today, and with the advent of AI, we will see even further digitalization of trade, and we need to make sure that they are there. How can these institutions facilitate discussions? They can facilitate them in two ways: setting global standards, like we've seen with the minimum global corporate tax, setting global best practice, building on years of experience so that countries are not starting from scratch, and also ensuring that we are focused on creating positive economic incentives and not creating arbitrages within the system. Arbitrages within the system do not lead to enhanced economic activity, but proper incentive structures within a global framework do.
So not only the tax system, but how we use the tax revenue.
Absolutely.
Your Excellency, Sheikh Salman, you mentioned incentives in answering the previous question, and I would love to hear your thoughts on how can we use these tax incentives to actually go where we want them to go, promising sectors, helping economies move to more knowledge-based. Maybe a specific example is research and development in companies. So how do you view nudging these incentives to actually get the right actions that policymakers want?
Thank you, Abdullah. And one of the important aspects as we are seeing the makeup of the economies adjusting in our part of the world and the Gulf, and as economies are diversifying. We look at the example in the Kingdom of Bahrain. Over the last 20 years, we've had a very successful economic diversification program. Today, the GDP is mainly non-oil. Over 85% of the sectors in the economy are non-oil sectors. The financial services sector is the largest sector in the economy. Logistics, tourism, manufacturing are all growing as part of the GDP in terms of their components of GDP. And it's extremely important that when you are focused on growing non-oil sectors, as we're seeing being done very successfully here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is that you ensure that the fiscal position becomes aligned with and positively correlated to growth in the non-oil sector. And you do that by having the right makeup of positively correlated revenue items that are positively correlated. And that, getting that right first, ensures that there is a very strong alignment, and the government actually becomes a partner in the economic growth and is positively incentivized to drive further economic growth. And as His Excellency Minister Al-Jad'an said, provide the infrastructure and provide the services for that. So then coming to incentives. We can incentivize based on sector. We can incentivize based on type of spend, like R&D. And it's also extremely important in our part of the world where we have very young populations that we are incentivizing also in terms of employment. And one of the important aspects of incentives that we need to focus on as well is how we incentivize employing, training, upskilling as part of that. R&D is absolutely important. Sector-focused incentives are important. Problem is, let's not focus too much on sector-specific incentives because we can't centrally plan it. One of the things that really works in economic planning is to ensure that you get out of the way of the private sector. And the less you, but you can incentivize behavior in terms of R&D expenditure, upskilling, training, employment, and then get out of the way and let the private sector decide which sectors to focus on.